Des Moines, Iowa. It is Joel and Luke here with the King and Country with some incredibly exciting news.
Yes, this fall, the King and Country Live, the Unsung Hero Tour. We're going to play some of your past favorites, new favorites, maybe even a Christmas song, an all-new production that has really been 30 years in the making. You are invited. Grab a family member, a friend, to kingcountry.com for tickets. We'll see you there.
Scott Dochterman, Chad Leistikow, together on one pod, talking odds and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health, with locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. A very important episode 61 of Legends and Listeners here on this Thursday morning from the Channel Seed Studios. I'm Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register. I'm back here in Iowa and joined by Scott Dochterman, the Athletic, who has an amazing background going on here at Big Ten Basketball Media Days in Chicago. We're together, as always, on the Iowa Everywhere Network. Scott, big show today. We have some 38 special tickets to give away, and a big Ohio State-Iowa football matchup just about 48 hours from now. How you doing over there in Chicago?
Oh, it's great here in Chicago. As you can see, you can't even see all the Big Ten teams here. There's now a million Big Ten teams. But no, today was the first day, women's basketball media day, 18 teams, different format than usual. It was a little different to get used to, but overall it was really interesting. I mean, it was fairly Iowa-centric, as you can imagine, because a lot of the discussions that took place were, what are you going to do now that, number 22 is off to the WNBA, and how are you going to capitalize on that? And I think the league overall is in a pretty good place.
Yeah, look forward to your coverage on The Athletic. We've got Dargan Southard and Tyler Tashman over there for the Register, so both entities have you guys covered. I've got a little women's basketball tacked on to the end of this show today, Scott. So we'll get to that. We'll get to those 38 special giveaway tickets. I promise. I know you guys. We thank you guys for entering. But Scott, let's talk about Iowa versus Ohio State. Last week's our show kind of delved into the state of Iowa's offense under Tim Lester. Today, we decided we would try to put together a bit of a roadmap to a possible Iowa upset, because obviously a win at Ohio State would completely change the season. It would change the complexion of the Big Ten. It would change what everyone's talking about, for the Hawkeyes. We'll get to that too. But I guess first, before we lay out the roadmap, we need to lay out the challenge, right? What's the mission? And that's Ohio State. You think to yourself, like, yeah, they could beat Ohio State. And then you kind of look into it, Scott, and it's just like, oh my God, this team is just loaded. And I just had to remind myself, like, this is a team that has not lost to any other Big Ten team besides Michigan since 2018 at Purdue. I mean, I do remember that game because it was so memorable. But, man, that's a long time ago. Ryan Day, 42-0 against unranked teams. Like, this is a very steep challenge, Scott.
Yeah, you laid that out really well, because it is. And this isn't one of those games where we're going to give you a bunch of hot air and say, yeah, they could do this and this and they're going to win. No, that's not the way this one goes, especially at the Death Star. This is a place Iowa hasn't won since 1991. The last 7 times they played Ohio State's been ranked in the top 10 anyway. And when you look at this game in particular, they have so many weapons and so many ways to beat you. It's whack-a-mole in some ways, because it's like, well, if you figure they have great wide receivers, so just make sure you don't give up the big plays and control them there. Well, they also have 2 of the best running backs in the country, and they also, by the way, have a veteran offensive line, and they have a quarterback who won a Big 12 championship, and then you have the defense where everybody came back just like Iowa, and so you go on and on and on and on, and you're like, what's your path? How can you do this? But you do have to take that step back, Chad. We all do, because this isn't an invincible team. There are ways to beat them. there have been times this year where they've looked mortal, and they haven't played a team as good as Iowa yet. So they are going to have to prove themselves, because they're going to have moments of adversity too. So I think overall, Chad, what we're looking at is a daunting task. It's going to take Iowa's best game to be in the game, but it has the potential, if it plays its best football, to be there in the fourth quarter. And that's really what you can ask for right now.
Well put. There's so many ways you could probably go with this answer, but again, trying to lay out the challenge first.
Mm-hmm.
Like what to you is the most intimidating part about this matchup from Iowa's perspective?
Oh, it's a great question, because my mind's doing like a figure eight, like which one's
I know.
the most difficult. And
I'll take whatever you don't. How's that sound?
I mean, other than the environment itself, because it is different. It's more. I would say Beaver Stadium is probably the craziest environment, but Iowa's had enough success there that it doesn't necessarily come across. I mean, it is intimidating. Don't get me wrong, but this one is like you're going up against a whole other team, another team in the stands. But I would say on the field, it's got to be the playmakers at wide receiver, to me, that changes the dynamic here. Because if they just had, even what they had under Jim Tressel, which were good wide receivers, but nothing like this, then you feel like, we'll be all right there. We've got enough good, but you can't just sell out and stop the run because of what they have at receiver. And they have as good of a freshman prospect as we've ever seen. And I feel like I say that every couple of years with talking about Ohio State with Marvin Harrison. But Jeremiah Smith is that. He was the number 1 overall recruit, and he's got 5 touchdowns in 4 games already. He has 19 catches. It's just, I think that to me is the one where they could change the game on a one play situation, and that's really what's most dangerous.
Yeah, that was actually my number 1 as well. Just to kind of double down on that. You think about where Iowa has been weakest this year, Scott. It has been in the big plays. And you could say all you want, yeah, we're going to try to keep them in front of us, all that stuff. But those guys can break tackles. Those guys can, one cut and you're gone. One bad angle, you're gone. I mean, it's such an explosive situation. And then you couple that with the fact that Iowa's unsettled at number 2 corner right now. I mean, sure, Deshaun Lee played a fine game against Minnesota, no question. But that was his first start of the season. If he was clearly the guy, he would have started this season. They've gone through 2 corners now at that spot. In fact, 3, if you talk about John Nestor was number 1 going into fall camp. So, and Jamari Harris, I think, is a very, very solid player. But, does he contain Jeremiah Smith if he's on his side of the field? I mean, certainly you get help in Iowa's defense, ideally, if you're not going man, which they rarely do. But, that part definitely is worrisome. And then the other – to just flip it around, I mean, this is a good defense. I mean, they allowed 6.8 points per game, Scott. They've allowed 3 second-half points total this season. And you think about Iowa, you're going to have to play a 4-quarter game for sure to win this game. But, I mean, not only do you have to stop these explosive weapons in the pass game, in the run game, like you said, 2 amazing running, like basically 2 Caleb Johnsons. And then, you can't even just knock one out,
Right.
It's not like knocking out Saquon Barkley or something. It's like they got another one. But yeah, that defense is, like you said, it's probably as good as Iowa's, and probably has more dudes than Iowa has. Maybe Iowa plays better as a team potentially, but that's a little bit scary when you're talking about, an offense that has not, it's found some stuff, but it's not exactly a finished product.
Yeah, you're right. And looking at this defense, I mean, it's a veteran unit. I mean, they have 4 seniors up front. 3 of them could have been in the NFL this year, but that they, like Jay Higgins and a couple of the other Iowa players, decided, I'd rather than be a 4th or 5th rounder or be down from where I think I can be. Now I'll come back, make money doing it, and then maybe boost my draft profile. And so when you look across the front wall and you see Jack Sawyer on one side and JT Tuimaleo on the other, and then you have Tyleik Williams, in the middle, and Hamilton, and you got others there on the front wall. I mean, that's as formidable as it gets. It might be as good as there is in the country. Now they haven't gotten after the quarterback as much as you would think, but a lot of times that's schematic. Get the ball out of your hands fast. That's chip block. That's do all those things because we know what they're capable of doing. And I think we've seen that time and time again, whether it's Chase Young at Ohio State or AJ Epineza at Iowa. It's what you do. You don't want those guys to wreck your life. But, I do think, though, and maybe this is where I take the step back and, again, undeify them, that I think this is a really good defense, but I think Iowa's on par with them too. I think Iowa's just as good as they are.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been listening to a few Ohio State podcasts this week, and it's like, they're at a different stage than your Hawkeyes are. They are thinking about national championship only. So they they're in the nitpick stages here on a great team. But their biggest question is about the defense so far. Why isn't the defense looking as good as we thought it was going to be is kind of what it's been. And they haven't looked great in the first half against Marshall or Michigan State. Second half, they've been dynamic against those teams. So, again, I'm guessing that's going to be a focus this week. But as you point out, Scott, maybe there are cracks. Maybe there are solutions on film. Maybe they're, stuff that Tim Lester and company can find, ways to move the ball, ways to make this competitive so you take it to the fourth quarter. So we're going to try to jump into, the possible ways to win this game, Scott. And the first thing that jumps out at me is Kirk Ferentz said something on Tuesday that I thought was a profound statement. And I want to get your take on it before we move forward into matchups, et cetera. But he said they might be the healthiest they've ever been. Which is what'd you make of that statement? I mean, that's pretty profound in 26 years. I mean, to actually say it too, Yeah.
I'm like, you trying to jinx yourself here, but that's my first thought on that. But I mean, overall, when to say that, and they've had so many issues over the last few years when it comes to health, it shows you that he's excited about that. If he's willing to say it and mean it, hey, we're excited, we're healthy. That says a lot because, as we know, I mean, last year was a disaster. I mean, it was like, the minefields around Hanoi. I mean, when it comes to football, Cade McNamara is out. Both tight ends are out. The whole offensive line, stepped down on mine. It was just like constantly over and over again. And the fact that they're healthy, that even the guys that were dinged up earlier, they got a shot to play, or, that like a Seth Anderson or LaShawn Williams. I think that says a lot for this team. And when you're healthy, then your macho takes over, your swagger takes over, and they have a reason to feel confident. They played really well in that second half against Minnesota. Now I know, it's Minnesota and blah, blah, but you go on the road and you're playing a rival, things happen. And we've seen that over and over, because that's the way it works. But I think they have a reason to feel confident. And if they're healthy and they're not hurting, then they feel even more reason to. And maybe this is as good a time as any to play Ohio State, if you think about it, because they didn't have a Power 5 opponent or Power 4 opponent in the off season, in the non-conference season. And they played Michigan State, which is rebuilding right now. Got some talent, but they're not, if they make a bowl, it'll be a great year for them. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one guy you did forget that also got hurt last year, Cooper DeJean, even in practice. I mean, talk about a major injury. Iowa wishes it could have Cooper out there in the secondary this week for sure. But speaking of health and finding a way to win, one automatic victory every week is a tee shot from GameDay Men's Health. Guys, old dudes, younger dudes, it's time to get back in the game with GameDay Men's Health. Low testosterone levels can be a detriment to all areas of your life, but the good folks at GameDay Men's Health can help improve your mood, your energy, your sex drive, your athletic performance. And that's whether you're an avid runner, a recreational tennis player, a weightlifter, or maybe you're still kind of running up and down the courts, in rec ball or at the field house in Iowa City, it always feels good to perform just a little bit better in all facets of your life. GameDay can also help you aggressively attack a plan for weight loss. Get your free private, no obligation consultation today. Check them out at GameDayMen'sHealth.com or call one of the locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, or North Liberty. Make sure to tell them that you heard about them on Legends and Listeners, Scott. All right, back to the formula for victory. We always have to give this disclaimer, right? Is turnovers.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
every time we do a matchup thing, just always know that turnovers is number one, no matter what. Okay. Like 2017, right, Scott? I mean, the classic, the 55-24 game. How did that game start, Scott?
Pick six on the first play from scrimmage. And then,
Exactly.
and then you had Josh Jackson with 3 interceptions?
Yep.
Including one of the
Stanley-
most incredible ones.
Yeah, and Stanley didn't throw a pick and threw 5 touchdown passes. So, and Tyler Kluver nearly scored.
Yeah.
What a game! What a game!
Yeah.
Polecat. That was the name of that play.
Polecat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so obviously-
what's funny is
Go ahead.
even in their game notes, give them credit. In their game notes, they even put the Gazette's headline in there, Woodshed and the zip code, and they put them in the Ohio State's game notes. Talk about the last time Iowa won. So you got to give them credit that they will tip their cap to the other team.
Yeah, and I mentioned Purdue 2018 was the last non-Michigan loss for Ohio State. Iowa 2017 was the previous.
Yeah.
Ohio State lost not to Michigan in the last game of the season. So it's tough to do. But speaking of turnovers, Scott, let's start with not turning it over on offense. You're going to have some luck. You're going to have to recover a loose ball. You're going to have to not lose the ball in the sun, on the punt returns. You just got to be clean in those things. But not turning it over for Cade McNamara, I think that's a big, big challenge because we remember, Scott, 2 years ago in the Death Star, Spencer Petrus's first snap of the game, pick.
Yeah.
Alex Padilla's first snap of the game when he got put in, fumble.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And then even Torrey Taylor ran a punt for a fake and got just smacked. I was rewatching that play today, actually. Oh, man, he got leveled. That was an ugly fake punt. And you just can't have stuff like that. So can Cade do it, Scott? Can Cade play efficiently against this opponent?
It's a great question. And I don't know that answer. I'd love to be able to all right, I'll tell you what. I'll spin this forward in what can Iowa do to win, and what is Cade capable of doing? Yeah, can he throw 5 touchdown passes? He doesn't have Nate Stanley's arm. He doesn't. And frankly, they don't have the weapons that Nate Stanley had. Even a tight end, that they were uniquely gifted in that area. But I'll say this, that he knows what it takes. He beat him. He was part of a team that beat him at Michigan. So he's, he's on a team that, hey, they haven't won for a while either in Columbus. So he knows what it takes. Now, can he translate that? No mistakes, complementary football, meaning, and then being very efficient with the ball. Throw it away. If it's 3rd and 7 and nobody's open, get rid of it. Punt, fight another down, fight another series. But can he make the makeables? That's the biggest question I have right now with really the offense and maybe even the whole entire team when they move forward, no matter what happens on Saturday, is can Cade McNamara and his receivers, the wide receivers, and then by extension tight ends, make the makeable plays in the passing game to advance this team and take it to another tier as an offense? I don't know that answer. I think it's going to come down to a little bit of protection, but it's also going to come down to, can he be accurate? Can he be fundamentally sound? Can he make the makeable plays? I think he's capable of some of that. And if he is, and then the other aspect of the offense, the running game is successful, then they put themselves in a position to where they can compete, for however long they can compete.
Yeah, the key to me in the passing game is to take advantage of Ohio State's probably weakest part of the defense, which is linebackers. And that means, to me, short passing game, and get your tight ends involved. You're leaning heavily into 12 personnel. That's good for this game because make them play 4-3. Make them play 3 linebackers out there. And if they want to go 4-2-5, bully the hell out of them with those with those tight ends. Just rotate Hayden Large in there with Lachey and Ostrenga and play bully ball like they did in 2013. I don't think I think Ohio State will go 4-3 when Iowa goes 12, and I think that could be an advantage, Scott, because from what I was told, and again, I mean, they got what's his Sonny? God, I'm blanking on the last name.
Sonny Spikes.
Yeah, he's a converted safety trying to play linebacker. It's take advantage of that. Maybe you get his eye discipline in the wrong spot. And so I think a heavy dose of Lachey Ostrenga. They haven't really leaned into Lachey yet this year very heavily. No. I mean, what a perfect opportunity to do that. He's 6'6", plenty of motivation, plenty of family there. I mean, it would be the storybook thing for Luke Lachey to have a game in the Horseshoe.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Then, if there's, if we're making a Disney movie or something, then he would be the star, and then, Luke's great, or whatever the movie title would be, and they know that, they know who he is, they know what he can do, they know he's at this point in the pass game for sure, he's the best weapon Iowa has. So they're gonna do whatever it takes. And as you mentioned, Sonny Sykes, he was considered, he was actually ranked higher than Xavier Wampa coming out as a safety, and then he just got too big, so he's at 230 and he can play linebacker. Great athlete, but this is that question. This is what comes down. This is how Iowa can compete with teams like this, which is you have incredible talent, NFL talent. They're going to go on and do great things, but we have 5-year guys who've been through this, who understand technically how to get it done. And then they've also battled for 5 years in that military style weightlifting program and conditioning program. And, so you may have all the talent in the world, and I'm not going to beat you in a race, and you're going to get to the NFL, and I'm going to hope to get to the NFL. But we meet head to head on the football field, it's your ass. And that's really what you've got to play for if you're Iowa. And if Iowa can do what it did in 13, which was go 13, but I don't know that they want to do it quite that way this time around. They went 13 personnel, and you think about the tight ends they had then. C.J. Fedorowicz, Jake Doozy, who's the best one who never got anywhere because of his injuries. Ray Hamilton was really good. George Kittle wasn't so bad by the end of his career, or now. They had one other one too played. Henry Krieger-Kobel, and they just leaned into it, and they hadn't handled that kind of physicality. They didn't know how to take it, and that's why Iowa was able to play bully ball until it was just like the disparity in talent just got too extreme. But frankly, Iowa has better talent today than they did in 2013. I think, now they don't have a tackle like Brandon Sheriff, who, just became a first-round draft pick that day, but they have better talent on defense. And I think they have a chance, they have a puncher's chance there. If they can run the football with effectiveness and tenacity and move, and some of these possessions are wins by not even scoring. It's just moving the ball from the 25 to midfield to punt to force them to go 90 yards on you. Those are things that you can win at without. Now you want to score every time, of course, but to me, it's going to take those types of efforts. And then, defensively, I have a lot of thoughts on how Iowa can gain an advantage if possible.
Well, let's stick with the offense for now, just to keep it flowing here, Scott, and flip to that run game. And Sonny Styles, by the way, messed that up a few times. Sonny Styles. Yeah. And they do have a guy named Caleb Downs, by the way, the SEC freshman of the year. So he might be more, be guarding Lachey potentially. So maybe it's an Ostrenga type of, situation or whatever. So it's not going to be as easy as just getting the ball to Lachey. I realize that. But still, I think the middle of the field might be your best bet, especially in 12. Running the ball, Scott. We had George Barnett on the Zoom on Wednesday. He said basically it's pretty much the best front four in college football. Hard to argue. They're just really good, really veteran, really sound. They got a great defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles. But I don't know. Tell me if I'm crazy. I feel good about Iowa's ability to make some creases in this run game. They've shown it time and time again, even against Iowa State, Scott. They uncorked some long runs with Caleb Johnson, and we just have not seen. You don't see that very often, and the fact that they've done it all 4 games tells me that's the recipe. You got to keep with it. You can't get away from it if you get stuffed. If you hand the ball to Caleb Johnson 3 times and punt, you can't get away from it. Obviously, you do need to do a little passing to set the run, yes, but you can't get away from it. Caleb Johnson is your path to victory, and he needs to be out there a lot. He can't carry 40 times, but he can sure carry 28 or 30. Yeah. And I think 25 plus is a must for Caleb Johnson. You just got to stick with it because you saw it against Minnesota. That's your best path. That's even your Hail Mary offense now. That's your best path to victory, Scott.
No question. Absolutely. You hit the ball out of the park on that because the absolute worst thing they could do, and Brian would get this way once in a while, is get impatient. Now, I understand they weren't good at run or pass, so they had to try something. But in this case, they're good at the run, and they're good against anybody in the run because they're good. Because they've got the line to do it. They have 70 starts up front, something like that. And you have a running back that's right now second in the country in rushing yards. You're a legitimate powerhouse running game. Now, they're going to slow that down. They're going to stop that. And it very well could be the first play of the game. It's like, all right, we're going to run whatever their cadence is mid-zone right, and they get stuffed. And they may do it again, and they may get stuffed again. And then they throw it on third down, and it's incomplete, and they punt. Next possession, don't get discouraged. Do it again. Do it again. And if you have to punt again, you have to punt again. It's okay to punt. It's not a sin as much as people think it is. You just have to stick with it because once in a while, that's when it breaks. Or they start to expect it, and that's when the safeties suck up because, Caleb Downs is still a sophomore. He's an NFL guy. I'm not going to even try to fool anybody on that one. He might be the most talented player in the country at his position and maybe on defense. Him or Will Johnson from Michigan. That said, we saw a first-team All-American, a first-round draft pick from Mississippi State who got sucked up by a bad run game in 2018, and Nick Easley, a walk-on JUCO kid from Newton, Iowa, get a 75-yard touchdown pass because he took 2 steps forward to stop the run. It happens that way. So, you just have to stick with it as long as you can, and if they put themselves in a position where they can't run, then they're going to lose. There's not even a question of that. So I think overall, Chad, you run the ball, all the way through the end of the third quarter. You just keep doing it over and over again. And if he needs a breather, throw in Jazz Patterson.
Yeah, and as you said, Leishon Williams is available this week too. It gives you just another veteran body in case, Caleb, his helmet comes off, something like that, Yeah. But yeah, you definitely want to lean into Caleb Johnson this week. And I hope Iowa fans out there understand that, if they do stick with it and it's not working, there's a reason they're sticking with it. Is because that's their best offense right now. You have to be honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not. So can the passing game get going? Sure. But it's just, you don't want to be dropping back to pass a bunch against these guys, or you're going to get sacked. You're going to have negative plays and you're dead if it's 2nd and 18. You just can't. You just can't. That's not the recipe to win is kind of what we're saying. So the formula to win is rely on that run. Trust the run. I mean, Scott, all 5 of these guys playing Well, Dunker didn't actually start in that game, but four of the 5 starting linemen were in that game. And I talked to Connor Colby about that Tuesday. He's like, yeah, that was my last game as tackle. I was like, yes, it was. And he's been a really good guard ever since. And Logan Jones was a first-year center in that game. Bo Stevens, Scott, started at guard in that game. Mason Richmond was a second-year left tackle. I mean, those guys are all back. Tyler Ellsbury, Scott, started in that game. He's a backup now. That's how veteran this line is. And you mentioned the starts. It's 43 for Richmond, 14 for Stevens, 30 for Jones, 40 for Colby, 17 for Dunker. So that's your starting 5 up front. So lean into it. That's the formula. And shorten the game. That's how you shorten the game too. Limit Ohio State's possessions. I put in my preview that posted this morning, limit Ohio State to 8 or 9 possessions. Make it, like you said, get a few first downs, and if you have to punt from midfield, punt. Don't punt it into the end zone. Those are the kinds of things, take it to the 50, punt it out at the 9, make them go the distance. Make them be patient against your team. So that's the formula. Limit possessions. Maybe they get 8 or 9 possessions, which would be great. And maybe they only score on 4 of them, and you've got a chance then. You've got a chance, especially if you're holding the field goals. So the run game in so many ways, Scott, is the way to go here, because that's how you shorten the game. That's where their weaknesses could be. And you don't want to play to their strengths, which is the pass rush and athleticism. And you still don't trust Cade enough to put the whole game on his shoulders. So, anyway, what else on offense? Anything else?
On offense, it's going to be about extending drives. And that's where the makeables come in. And I'm not, if Iowa had more capabilities to fire down the field, I would say, hey, first play of the game, throw it 70 yards in the air, just say, and kind of flash your middle finger at them and say, you're going to have to cover this all day. But they don't have that kind of game. So you don't do it. So what you do is, if it's 3rd and 6, and if you got a chance to, boot, swing pass, first down, that's a win. Take your wins, add them together, and that's stay on the field. Just make the makeables. Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything out of character. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to dive for a first down, because you may get the ball knocked out of your hands. And I know I'm preaching to the choir when it comes to talking about Iowa football, because they usually are pretty smart about those things. But that's just, to me, be efficient, be who you are, and you should be in decent shape. I mean, they're going to stop you running the football at times. They're just too good. It happens. They're going to smother your wide receivers because their athletes are better than yours. Maybe you get it. And if that happens, throw the ball away. You'll live another down. Just don't try to do too much, because that's sometimes your fear with any quarterback. But Cade has kind of got that history.
One of the advantages I feel like Iowa does have is a place kicker, and I think it's another one where you just have to trust your guys here, Scott. If you get to the 36-yard line, try the field goal. You're gonna have to. You can't punt there. I don't think I would go for it there unless it's like 4th and 1. Trust your place kicker. I'll be curious to watch Drew Stevens in warmups, but he's just been so good, so reliable. He's got the leg. Get your 3 points. That's demoralizing, Just think about like watching the Bears or whatever. Like, who is that they were playing, or any NFL? You give up a 56-yard field goal. It's like, it was the Texans, right? Remember that game? Yeah. Like they just kept hitting like 50-plus yard field goals. It's like, the defense played okay, but they got 3 points on that. Yeah, and it's just like, it can be discouraging if you can. Yeah, if Drew Stevens can pile up 3 long field goals in this game, take advantage of it. You've got a weapon in him. So. You just got to look for every edge. Don't jump on false starts. Easier said than done in that environment. Iowa's been great in the penalty department this year, best in the country. So that's a veteran team for you. But again, that's just the kind of stuff, the details that this offense needs to focus on. No pre-snap penalties, stuff like that. But I feel confident about that, Scott.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, this is a mature team. And this is a mature offensive line, which leads a mature team. When you have all of your starters up front have started in previous seasons, and 3 of them are seniors, 2 are juniors, plus you have a senior tight end who's been there for 5 years. They have a maturity about them. They present themselves that way, and they play mature football. So I expect them, maybe you might have one, but no more than one. You can't expect perfection, but you can expect excellence. And excellence goes a long way when it comes to this.
All right, let's talk defense. Good stuff there, man. I love talking matchups with you. That's fun. We did this for the Iowa State game too, and we were actually pretty close on that one. I feel like
right.
We broke that down pretty well. So let's talk about defense. You said you wanted to talk about, so let me tee it up for you here, Scott. What would you do defensively if you're Phil Parker? What's the game plan? Because you can't stop everything.
You frustrate the hell out of their passing game. And what I mean is you get a little handsy. You get a little aggressive. Yeah, right. Not downfield, but you make sure that you let them know that you're going to be there all day. And part of the disruption is getting your hands up in the passing lanes. And it may not include getting sacks, but disrupting the flow, the vision, every part of it, making sure that there's an impact there, because Will Howard is a really good quarterback. But is he a great quarterback? We don't know that. He was very good at Kansas State, and at times he wasn't very good. I mean, he did lose to Iowa State. So you've got to remember things like that Ohio State is this Goliath, and we've known that our whole entire lives, and it'll be in there in our grandkids' lives. But they're not the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 1970s. And when you start to take and put it by the pieces, and you say, okay, the quarterback, he played at Kansas State, and he was really good. But does that mean that he's going to be a first-round draft pick, or is he just going to be a priority free agent? Okay, what does he do well? Well, he's pretty accurate. He's got great wide receivers, and he runs the ball effectively. Okay, well, that's fine. If he runs the ball, hit him as hard as you can every single time. And if he throws and you can't get there because they have a really good offensive line, get your hands up. Y.A. Black has hands, it was a wingspan of a condor. So go ahead and knock those balls down and get in their head. And then if you hit off the line of scrimmage a little bit, it disrupts the pass game. It reroutes your receivers and disrupts their timing. And with the disrupted timing brings frustration. And you have a new quarterback who hasn't been tested as a member of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And he's playing against one of the best defenses in the country. And if you consistently frustrate him, then that's when the anxiety comes out of the audience, because they are the number 3 team in the country right now. They're my pick to win the national title. But when you get to that point when they're going, this is getting, what are we doing out there? And you start to hear the grunts and the growls, and they become boos. And then they're looking at each other like, what can we do? And then Chip Kelly's looking at Ryan Day, and they're aggravated. And Will Howard gets frustrated. And then he tries to make a play that he's not capable of making. That's called an interception, because you start to get pressure and you figure, I need to make a play. And then you throw the ball down the field. And if you're in the place where you need to be, which I expect them to do that because they're a veteran secondary now and they got their little problems out of the way, that's when you can turn them over. So that's what to me works. Their run defense will be fine. They will get gouged a few times because those are great running backs. Frustrate them. Make that the goal. Frustrate Ohio State.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better. I mean, that just Aiden just cut and paste that, put it on the video. There's your game plan on defense, Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm with you. I think you have to protect your pass defense as much as possible. Just like I said early in the beginning, that's where you can get. Chip Kelly's a really good offensive coordinator. Obviously, a mastermind on offense. Yeah, he's gonna find the weak. Those guys find the weakest spot in your defense. And I think we know it's going to be, throws to the edge. Jamari's great. I really like Jamari Harris, but I mean, Deshaun Lee is going to get tested. PJ Fleck tested him. Deshaun did a pretty good job, no question. And I like how he tackles. I think that could be beneficial in the run game. But they're going to test him. So you're going to have to supply some help there with Quinn Schulte, with Xavier Wampa, with Cohen Entringer, assuming he's going to play a little bit, Sebastian Castro, whatever. I think you just have to take your chances with maybe your four best defensive players, Scott. Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, Y.A. Black, Aaron Graves. Just count on them to stop the run, do your two gap stuff up front. We know YA is going to do a great job with that. I think the weakest part of Ohio State's offensive line is on the interior if there is a little bit of a weakness. So I think that's possible. And I think Ethan Hurkett and Deontay Craig are probably better run stoppers than they are pass rushers. I don't know if you disagree with me there.
Yeah.
So rely on that front six, Scott, to take your chances against the run there and make Chip Kelly, like you said, make him be super patient to get the ball down the field. Because I don't know, Ohio State wants a lot of points, will they be content to try to grind this one out 20-7? We don't know that. This is the Chip Kelly Ryan Day marriage. It's early, I think you take advantage of that.
For sure, because there's going to be impatience. I mean, they want to score. That's their style of football and they've been so good at it, and they are so good at it that they're going to want. Again, there's going to be that impatience factor. It's like, are they going to be willing to go, hey, they get the kickoff and it goes to the 25 and it's grind out 3 or 4 first downs just to get to, midfield-ish area. And then are they going to be like, well, we're going to try to hit the home run there. Well, it's not there. Then it's 2nd and 10. And it's like, well, we'll throw the out. Are they going to be content with that? Or are they going to say, well, we just need to win this battle of attrition? Now, when they had Jim Tressel, they did it. But they have a different style of offense, and it's a better style of offense now. I'm not going to say that it was better then. It's certainly better now. But there's aspects of this, and Iowa makes you play ground acquisition football. They're built in 2 ways, and those tenets on defense have to be their pillars on Saturday, which is stopping the run with their 2-gap scheme. They take a lateral first step. Most teams take a vertical first step. That enables them to control the gap. And if they can do that, they will slow the running game enough to where it's going to be a haul for them. Not saying that they're going to get 36 yards in that game. I mean, they might get 136 yards. But, you just make them fight you every single play, because that's Iowa's game. If Iowa gets you in a fist fight, I kind of compared it today with a couple of conversations I had here. If this gets into Rocky Balboa world, that's where Iowa wants you. Drag you down in the mud.
I like it.
Fight you on the carpet. Not, hey, you're the boxer and you're jabbing. I mean, Iowa doesn't have that kind of quickness, but and that's why just fight. Just make them fist fight you, because that's a game that they don't want to be in. They can still win. But, if there's one analogy, Chad, that I've always thought of for Iowa in these types of games, especially when Iowa's is pretty good, they're like the 30-something construction worker sitting at the end of the bar with a shot and a beer, got a little bit of gray scruff to them, sitting in a flannel. And if you go up to them and you want to fight, you better understand what you're about to get. Now, you may be bigger and more physical, and they may whip your ass. But at the same time, you better understand it's going to be an all-night job. And that's kind of how I looked at Iowa football. They're not flashy, but, man, they are tough. And I think if they can at least, again, just frustrate them, make them impatient, make some incompletions, let Will Howard understand that things aren't going to be easy today. If you can do that, give yourself a chance to be in this game. Then it's up to the offense to make those necessary plays.
Well, and the fact that Iowa lost to Iowa State has them very under the radar in this game. Ohio State has the Oregon game next week. That's the one that all these guys on the podcast are talking about. They're like, they're not taking Iowa too seriously. I mean, I'm sure Ohio State is, but in that psyche, it's not like Iowa's, if Iowa's 4-0, it'd be like, hey, Iowa's 14th in the country. This would be like, nationally, big showdown in the Big Ten. But now it's like unranked Iowa. I don't think anybody's expecting them to win. But I have a great idea for you Hawk fans listening to this. Just in case, go get yourself a bottle of Steeple Ridge bourbon. Steeple Ridge bourbon, just a reliable, steady show sponsor, always there for you from farm to bottle. Steeple Ridge rewards you with a high-quality, delicious drinking, award-winning craft bourbon. If you don't find Steeple Ridge bourbon at your favorite retailer, and you've got a few days to figure this out, ask for it by name. Steeple Ridge is distilled, aged, and bottled in Iowa at Lonely Oak Distillery. Heck, you could drive all the way up to Earling, Iowa to pick one up if you needed to. You got time. Hawk fan. All right, Scott. This is probably the most, I think we've got people fired up for the possibility that Iowa could be competitive. We're both realists. We know this can unravel quickly. But let's talk about what happens if Iowa does it, Scott. What happens if Iowa pulls off the upset and you guys are out there going crazy? It's like this season is what, Scott? What changes? I mean, obviously it would be monumental to do something like this, but what if Iowa does win?
It opens up every possibility, for what you think. Now, and with that, I don't say, go the distance and win the national championship. But I think in realistic terms, it says every realistic goal is on the table then, which is get to the Big Ten championship game, get to the playoff, host a playoff game, or even get a bye in a playoff game, or all those things are back on the table. And they're not completely off if they lose, but they have to put themselves in a position to where they look good enough to say, okay, they lost on a 54-yard field goal to their rival by 1 point, and then they went to Columbus and lost by 7 points or something like that, and they played really well, and they won the rest of their games. That puts them in that conversation. If you get beat 54-10 like you did 2 years ago, you might as well just start saying, well, are we going to go to Orlando or Tampa, again. So I think what we want to look at is it opens up those possibilities. Now, this is where Kirk is uniquely gifted. And I think in college football, he's the best one I've ever seen, is that he handles the adversity of success and failure better than anybody else. When they lose, they bounce back. It's like the last game didn't happen. And if they win, then they put it to bed pretty quickly. I mean, this would be, and there have been times when it's happened, it's not worked out. Like I'll say the last time they beat Ohio State and they looked like world beaters, and then they got annihilated in Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't think that one was head issues. I think that was play calling issues.
Yeah, I know. We've been over that one.
Yeah. That was not a well called game. So, there was a lot of mistakes. So, I don't know. What do you think? What does Monday look like? What's the rest of the season look like?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, this team came back. All these guys came back for this, right? It's not like it's some young plucky team. Oh, let's give them all we got. Like this is what these guys came back for was this shot at a special season, and they know it. You better believe that Kirk Ferentz and all the coaches, Ray Braithwaite, anyone, Seth Wallace, just go down the line, of the fiery coaches in there. Like they're reminding him, like, here, this is your chance. Jay Higgins talked about it the other day, and I loved what he said. He's like, people's at the next level, doubt that I could do this at the next level. Here's my chance to put on film how I can play against basically NFL players, Scott. Embrace that opportunity, and they are. They're not scared of it. These guys are not scared of this opportunity, and so I don't discount the win, and I do think it's something that these guys are expecting, and I think it would be validation for what these guys did when they came back. And then the schedule does open up for them a little bit. I think Washington's a pretty good team, actually. They're better than I thought they would be. That would be a tough bounce back game potentially. Now, if Iowa loses this one, I like it the other way. I like Iowa to bounce back and take care of business, at 9 a.m. Pacific time. But the schedule, I just like how it plays out after that. Washington, at Michigan State, home against Northwestern, home against Wisconsin. You finally get some home games in here, folks.
Yeah.
And then at UCLA, which, I mean, that looks like maybe your easiest game left on the schedule, potentially, maybe Northwestern.
Yeah.
But, I like this 5-game block. So, yeah, I mean, tons of excitement if they could win this. But obviously, Scott, let's be realistic. What if it's a loss? What if it's a close loss? What if it's a blowout loss? How does that affect how you look at this game or this season?
Well, and then this is what's interesting is we talk about the highs and the lows, and they don't get that way because they're the ones in the arena, and one way or the other, they shut it down because they get right back to practice on Mondays, and I think that's been very helpful for this program that they've done that for the last 10 years is get back on the practice field because when you're out there grinding against each other, you're not worried about what happened on Saturday, one way or the other. If this is not successful, which is, I think, a 91% chance of likelihood, then what you do is, you gauge the game for what happened. And if Iowa competes in this game, let's say they lose 23-10, 23-16, something where, they're just a better team than we are, because they're supposed to be. They are. Then you just say, all right, tip your cap. Let's move on, and we'll worry about the next game. And fans need to. They're not going to listen to me on this, but they need to be like, "Oh, we need to fire everybody." You know what? That's unrealistic. Now, if you lose 54-10 again, that's going to be hard to come back from this time around. And I'm not saying that Jay Higgins is a tremendous leader and a great player, but to try to climb that Jack Campbell pole again is going to be really tough, and I don't see 54-10 myself, but I do think that this team mentally is mature and it's capable of bouncing back. And as long as they play a competitive game where they feel like, we get like 2013, they lost 34-24. It's tied in the fourth quarter. Ohio State had better players, more talent. Braxton Miller and Carlos Hyde and those guys were just too good for them. Okay. I think then move on. And most of the public should do that too. Am I off base on that?
No, I mean, to me, that's kind of how I look at this too. Is somebody in my text group sent this to me, Scott, and it's probably, I'm guessing it's not on Iowa's game notes. You wouldn't advertise this, but they've played since they beat Penn State in 2021. They've played 7 ranked opponents. The scores are Michigan 42-3, Kentucky 20-17. Michigan 27-14. Then it gets ugly. 54-10 to Ohio State, 31-0 Penn State, 26-0 Michigan, 35-0 Tennessee. People are tired of that. So you got to be competitive here. You got to close that gap. And I do think the program is in a position where it has closed that gap just because they're more functional on offense. The defense isn't much different, honestly. In fact, the rush defense might be better. So I think that's what it is for me, is if it's a competitive game, like you said, it doesn't have to be down to the wire, but just you competed, you played pretty well, you got beat by a team with, 25 Caleb Downs. It's just like crazy. You got the number 1 recruit in the country. You got, great defense. It's in their place. They never lose there. So, but if you get blown out again, that's going to be, you're right, tough to swallow. I believe in Kirk getting him to rally him back, but still, the season would just feel they'd have to win a bunch in a row to kind of win people back for a little while if you got blown out here. So that's kind of where I'm.
And I want to caution people from feeling like, well, a win or else. If you start thinking that way, if like they lose, then I'm done with them. Well, then be done with them. Because it just isn't the game to mess around with that way with your emotions and stuff. Think of it as we're going to lose and be surprised with you win. You just hope that they compete. That's really the mindset you have to take because, I know you get it. I get it. All the tweets from self-pity fans. Oh, I'm tired of this. I don't know what you guys do. You know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be the community bartender on Saturday. I'm not going to don't saddle up with your problems and whine to me about it. I hate self-pity anyway, and I really hate it when it comes to sports. So, as long as they compete in this game, and it could be 30-17, just say, all right, and move on. Because here's the other part, Chad, and this is the part that we haven't thought about, or people haven't thought about. They're 1-0 in the Big Ten. This is just one Big Ten loss, and the schedule that you laid out there, you look at them one by one by one, they're capable of competing and beating every single team on the rest of their schedule. What if this is their only Big Ten loss and they're 8-1 and potentially they're in a position to be in 10-2, and then, oh my, they might actually end up accidentally getting in the Big Ten championship game. There are possibilities beyond this. So, but that said, you want to compete against a team like Ohio State. I think probably the most fun day in modern Iowa history for football was beating Ohio State in the Woodshed game. This is the only place that Kirk hasn't won in. The next time they play there at the earliest is 2029. So this will probably be the last chance that he gets there. So, I mean, you hope you can get it done.
All right, Scott, ready to give away some concert tickets? 38 special, baby. Hoyt Sherman Place. Appreciate Iowa everywhere, including us in this, because it's a cool deal. It's a cool deal that we get to give away some tickets, Scott. And you have the winners, totally randomly drawn. Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, and I hope all of you are rocking into the night, and your heart needs a second chance, and you're so caught up in you. Jason Baker. I don't know if it's the punter or not, but it's Jason Baker, Sarah Lohman, and our third winner, Patricia Hawkins.
That's awesome. Congratulations to you guys. Aiden, if you want to jump on and tell them whatever they claim their tickets, are you going to reach out to them or what?
I will reach out to all of our winners. So congratulations to everyone.
Congratulations, everyone.
Keep your eye out here over the next few days.
That is awesome. Thank you, Aiden. We're going to talk a little Big Ten, Scott. We are a Big Ten show as well. But, man, that was a lot of fun. I loved breaking down that matchup with you. That was really, really a lot of fun. I could do that every week, honestly.
Yeah.
Interesting games. As the new Big Ten really does give us some interesting games. Michigan State at Oregon is our Friday night game. I like having the Friday night game, at least as a consumer. Fox, 8 p.m. I guess it'll be 9 p.m. Eastern, right? I land Columbus around that time Friday night. So sweet. I can watch some football. Indiana Northwestern on the Lake, 2:30 BTN. Rutgers at Nebraska, 3 p.m. FS1. I love the 6:30 slate, Scott. Michigan at Washington. Totally interested in that game in terms of Iowa.
Yeah.
And then USC at Minnesota. Man, Minnesota just tough schedule here to start.
Yeah.
Especially after losing to Iowa, that'll be a tough one. But to me, the Michigan-Washington one stands out. Like, I think Washington's better than probably was the better team over Rutgers, in my opinion, but they lost the game. They had 500 some yards of offense over there and lost. Michigan was a Chad Greenway call away from losing there. And that's a rematch of the national title game. I mean, that's
right.
I'm happy for NBC getting this one.
A fun part about that is, Chad, that Michigan's opened like at the beginning of the season or whatever, like -9 on this game. And actually now it's swung the other way where Washington's favored -2.5. And part of that is what we've seen out of Michigan, that their passing game is challenged. It's in rough shape. It's good everywhere else, and then I got a chance to watch that game last week and the end of it, and I actually opined about the horrors of Big Ten football or officiating, and that was the same crew that it was everybody's ire a few years ago for Michigan Iowa in 2022 at Kinnick Stadium. It was the same crew, and you look at that play. And there is some ambiguity in the way that they handle everything there. And was it toes behind the line? Is it arm behind the line? Is it the plane? Is it the marker? But I was disappointed because the way Minnesota fought back, that would have been really fun. But, a couple of others that stand out for me. I mean, there's a lot of high point spreads. Indiana, they could go 6-0. I mean, that is unbelievable. Now their schedule is helping them get 6-0, but they're 13.5-point favorites at Northwestern, and on the lacrosse field on the lake, and then another one that we never would have thought would have been big, Chad, in a million years. I mean, the two roughest programs over the last handful of years, Rutgers at Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska is the only Power 4 conference team to not go to a bowl since 2016, and Rutgers is the losingest team of the divisional era in the Big Ten. Nebraska is -7, but that's intriguing. Undefeated Rutgers, although I don't think that it's undefeated after Saturday. But anyway,
you like the Huskers, huh? You like the Huskers to win it.
I love them. They're great.
Scotty Husker, we know him.
Yeah.
There's still 5 unbeaten Big Ten teams. So it'll be, when you talk about, hey, could Iowa sneak into a Big Ten title game? I think eventually these teams are going to get beaten up. But obviously Ohio State, Oregon are 2 of the 5.
Yeah.
They play each other next week. Rutgers is one of them. Indiana is one of them. Penn State.
State
did a good job beating Illinois. They don't look like world beaters to me, but they look like a typical Penn State team. So, and they get Ohio State too at some point, right?
Yes, they play Ohio State. Yeah, they play Ohio State. They play USC. So they've got some. Yeah, they've got some good opponents coming up, and but you look at this scenario, which I painted out before the season. Let's say Oregon loses to Ohio State, Penn State loses to Ohio State, Iowa loses to Ohio State, Michigan loses to Ohio State, and then you go, man, Ohio State played a lot of good teams, Then, but at that point, they're all 8-1, and they didn't play each other. So, that's a scenario that A, gets you in the conversation, or B, you get a tiebreaker and you work your way into it. So, but I'm fascinated. I like the Friday nights too. I know some people don't because of we're, ruining the Friday nights for the kids. Well, come on. When we're in a hotel in Columbus, Ohio on Friday night, do we want to say, well, I don't want to watch a Big Ten game. I'd rather, scroll through Twitter to find out if Dowling beat Valley or Southeast Polk or something,
Well, and I think the addition of the West Coast teams helps the Friday night thing without burdening like the Michigans and the Ohio States and the Iowas. And I guess Nebraska doesn't want to play Friday night games anymore either, right?
That's true. Yeah,
So-
they don't, but understandable at home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a chore for them too. They got, how that place is built. So, but I think at some point they need to tell Michigan, sorry, you're going to have to play once in a while on Friday night. But that's
exactly. But I do think the West Coast teams are ripe for Friday night games because the time change and all that. Like it's only 6 o'clock out there, whatever. Makes sense. And it's like I was at UCLA on a Friday later this year.
Very excited about that. By the way, they are out there.
Are they?
That was one. I talked to the AD, and he's like, ticket sales are pretty high for that game. We're very excited. In fact, he's like, we're more excited for that game than we were against some of the other teams in the old Pac-12. I mean, they just legitimately have some juice to it.
Wow, how about that? Well, I do think there's gonna be a lot of Hawkeye fans at that game. Making the Rose Bowl pilgrimage, maybe trying to atone for the Christian McCaffrey game. I guess since you're at Big Ten Basketball Media Day, Sky, we should talk like 2 or 3 minutes of hoops here. So, Sydney Fulter, knee surgery for the Hawkeye women. Obviously, there are a ton of women's storylines. You were there. I'm not. You tell me what'd you learn about the Hawkeyes? Hawkeyes women.
It was kind of fun to sit and talk and see Hannah Stolke, who has had her own issues with her knee and had a procedure in the off season, but now she's back full go in practice. And you want to talk about somebody who's matured over time. Definitely Hannah Stolke. I mean, a couple of years ago, she was like a fraidy cat, and she admitted it, like she was really nervous talking to media. Now she just seems very relaxed and confident to herself. I think people are going to fall in love with Lucy Olsen. I mean, she just has a bubbly personality. She seems genuinely excited to be with Iowa, just the way that, I mean, she get 2,000 fans at a game at Villanova. And she talked about one of the things, it might have been Tyler who asked, Tyler or Halas asked about just playing, in front of all these people. She's like, last year we went to Connecticut and the place was pretty full and loud. I'm excited to now go to an arena that's going to be sold out every game and it's going to be for us. And I can't wait. And, people were asking questions of, for her in particular, like, what do you think of, what are things you like to do outside? And, and trying to, just get a little more information on her. And she was, fun and energetic, but she's just like, the only things I like to do are eat, sleep, and play basketball. That's really what I love to do. And so it really kind of brought it to the forefront with her. And Jan Jensen was fantastic as always. I never had a bad interview with her. Same with you. One point she was asked, what was your day like when you found out that you got the job? And she said she sat there for about 5 minutes and didn't say anything and just thought, and then all of a sudden she got really choked up and she had to take a drink. And she's like, well, I guess this is for you Iowa people. This is like Kirk Ferentz always doing this. And I thought that was pretty funny, but then she talked about I know. Then she talked about her journey with Lisa and just how much, I worked with my best friends and, and so she was fantastic. And so did I learn much? Yeah. The only other thing I would add is they love the freshmen. I think the freshmen are going to be really impactful. And, I agree with that. It sounds like they've got them all kind of charted in their own directions, but, I would to ask everybody to go read Tyler's work and Dargan's work and Mike Halas and John Bonenkamp and everybody else writing from this. So.
Yeah, it is exciting. We get a lot of traffic on Iowa women's basketball for good reason. People really care about it, and we hear about that. And so I'm glad you're there to hit that, and it's going to be fun. I mean, I just caution people, like Caitlin Clark was a unicorn. She was one of a kind. Probably will never ever be repeated. Maybe not by anybody in women's basketball, let alone the state of Iowa. Yeah. It's not going to be quite the same, but I'm really excited to see the enthusiasm, the interest in this team. And those freshmen you mentioned, Scott, I've been to, I got to go to 3 practices or something. I was doing some different stories on people. And Tegan Mullaney is going to be really good. Ava Hayden is going to be really good. Yeah. Like you can see that right away. And I think Taylor Stremlo is probably going to be the third one, especially with a Fulcher out. I wouldn't be surprised if she has a more prominent role. So, and a Fulcher will be back, it sounds like mid-November at the latest. So it's a good time to do it, but it's not ideal, obviously, for a senior, and you feel bad for her.
You feel bad for her, but she's, from what it sounds like, she is the Kate Martin of this team. She is the leader. And even if she can't compete in practice, she's the one barking at everybody. And, they both Hannah and Lucy were pretty emphatic that she's the leader of this team. And the way she handles herself is in that realm as well. So, Taylor, that's who, Jan Jensen kind of described as kind of cut from that cloth, as Kate Martin, as Sydney Falter, and Maligny is Tegan Maligny is Maligny. I can't remember how you pronounce it.
It's Mullaney. It's Mullaney.
Mullaney. Okay. Very excited about what she can bring, and Ava Hayden, what she can bring, and once Aaliyah Guyton can get it going, that. She is too, but, they're going to be careful with her, obviously. So there's a lot to be excited for, Chad. And another part where Jan choked up, and I asked this question, was about just, what did you think this whole season sold out again? You don't have Caitlin Clark. You don't have Lisa Bluter. You don't have Kate Martin. Everybody knows this team's not going to be in that championship environment, probably. No, we're not breaking any news there, and we're not holding them back, but it's unlikely, and then she's just like, it just shows you how much these people love, this team. And it's true. they love this team. It's like family to them. And it's really neat to see that a women's basketball team means so much to the people of Iowa and their fans.
Absolutely. They weren't even picked top 5 in the Big Ten preseason. But like you said, that connection, the joy that this team brings, it's infectious, and it's especially in today's world, where there's so much division in everything we do, including in sports. And obviously with an election coming up, it's just so much divisiveness. Like Iowa women's basketball, it's just really it's an enjoyable life experience, I think, for so many people. So glad you put it that way, Scott. And let's wrap up there. We've gone long, but thanks to all you legends and listeners out there. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week from the Channel Suit Studios every Thursday. Chad Leistikow, Scott Dochterman. Talk to you soon here on the Iowa Everywhere Network.